Good afternoon, everybody. We're still missing one of our panelists who will be joining shortly. My name is Masiwa Rusare. I'm with Simplified. It's a pleasure meeting all of you to discuss these important issues. From the morning sessions, different speakers were highlighting the importance of KYC and CDD issues as key access barriers for remittance access for low-income and rural households. And I think this session that's the Hello KYC session that Pedro mentioned earlier on. And then also it's Hello Regulators. We have some regulators here. So it's really a pleasure. Just to give an overview of why simplified due diligence and alternative identity is important. In a number of countries, there are still citizens that either have limited ways of identifying themselves or actually don't have identities at all. Now, it's important to ensure that we don't leave this behind. It's important to ensure that these are well served in terms of financial services. But also, this is the FATF framework, Financial Action Task Force framework, and the risk-based approach that it emphasizes also flags the importance of simplified due diligence and alternative identity. Actually, if you look at recommendation 10, that deals with customer due diligence, it does emphasize or it requires institutions to identify and verify customer identity using reliable, independent source documents, data, or information. That's provided for within the FATF framework. But what this means, this has meant different things to different institutions, to different regulators. We have had situations where those people without proof of identity or are unable to prove where they who they are or where they stay haven't been able to access financial services. So given that context, in 2020, FATF also followed up with some guidance in terms of digital identity. We all know the role of technology in terms of enabling identity for customers and financial services. In that document, it emphasizes the importance of alternative identity in identity proofing, that is to ensure that you can prove that the customer is he or who she says she is. It also emphasized the importance of different levels of assurance for the different identity systems. And also, more importantly, it does emphasize that the levels of assurance should be linked to the risk that is posed by the customers. So this is where the simplified due diligence, alternative identity issues come from. Now, how this is landing at the country level or at the different institution level still remains a challenge. And this is the issue that we are going to be discussing in this panel. We are going to be looking at what are the opportunities that are available from the regulator's perspective as well as from the remittance service provider's perspective in terms of innovating and allowing innovations on this issue. So I'll just quickly introduce my panel. From my far left there is Dr. Raymond Shazi. He is the manager in the Prudential Department for the South Africa Reserve Bank. He has also been involved a lot in the risk-based approach work and some work also at the regional level with Esamalag. Welcome. The next is Seth Amoko. He is a compliance manager with Financial Intelligence Center in Ghana. Seth has been involved in training on AML safety for regulators as well as financial service providers. He has also been involved in mutual evaluations under the GFRID Regional Grouping, which is the West African Anti-Money Laundering Group. Welcome, Seth. Next is Moses Bandurachi. Moses is the Relationship Officer in charge of remittance for EcoBank Uganda. He has also been involved in compliance issues. Then last but not least is Mariam Adan Osman. Mariam is the compliance manager for Amal Money Express, based here in Kenya. She is also on the board of Kenya Remittance Association. Welcome. Yeah, so I'll start with you, Raymond, in terms of the topic under discussion. What has been your experience within the South Africa context, or broadly within the regional context, in terms of the opportunities and challenges that as regulators you have been able to provide regarding simplified due diligence and alternative identity? What has been working and what hasn't been working?
Oh, thank you, Monsieur, and good afternoon. I think the most important thing in this matter is that the change cannot be left to the private sector exclusively. We need everyone's input to lead and to drive change. More importantly, the regulators, the public, the private sector, pulling together to ensure that we drive change. A few years ago, as the South African Reserve Bank, we received a license application from one of the entities that said they wanted to onboard clients using facial recognition, iris reading, and fingerprints reading. That was groundbreaking, which means we are starting to break the ground in terms of new identification. So change cannot be left to the private sector, the regulators, the government, the policymakers, the government. Everyone needs to be in the forefront in ensuring that we support and drive change so that we have the developing economies and new ways of identifying clients so that we can onboard more clients, particularly the low-risk clients, to ensure financial inclusion. So that's the points that I've seen that they work. If we're going to drive change and step into new identification of clients and the development of our economies, we need to pull together as regulators, the government, public, private sector, the banking sector, insurance sector, everyone, to make sure that we drive change and we pull together to ensure that we have successful economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raymond. Change, you've emphasized the importance of change being an all-stakeholder endeavor. I think that's really quite important. Turning to Mariam, now jurisdictions do differ in terms of what their regulatory frameworks allow in terms of innovation, but I think the key thing is that innovating for financial inclusion is important and is recognized by the regulators and other development frameworks. Now, given your case, the case of Amal, what are some of the innovations that you have been undertaking regarding simplified due diligence, alternative IDs, to be able to better serve low-income and rural households?
Good afternoon, everybody. Allow me to talk about Amal. Amal Express pioneered the idea of moving money around the world and has been connecting people globally for over 25 years. As one of the world's leading providers of cross-border business payments, Amal Express is transforming how business can expand globally through one of the largest and most diverse payment networks in the world. We are a leader in global payment service, from small business and global corporations to families near and far away to NGOs in the most remote communities on earth. Amal helps people and businesses move money to help grow economies and realize a better world. We continue to innovate, develop new ways to send money through digital mobile and retail channels with a selection of convenient payout options to meet businesses and consumers. So I go back to the question. In terms of innovations, we have come up with digital onboarding processes that are still awaiting approval from the regulators. The challenge is basically regulators taking too long to give approval due to the customer due diligence procedures that they require us to have for our customers. And we also have challenges in terms of customers wanting to adopt this digital payment modes because they're looking at the cost of exchange when transferring the funds through mobile wallet, and also looking at the transfer costs when they want to now transfer the funds or maybe withdraw the funds. So there's a cost on that. That is the challenge we have in terms of moving digitally. Allow me to thank Senfree and IFAD for allowing us to be here and being part of the Remittance Access Initiative that was highly beneficial for us. We greatly enhanced the access among low-income and rural households, and we look forward to collaborate more with Senfree and IFAD on remittance and remittance-related work. Amongst others, we were able to achieve risk assessment capacity building. This was through a lot of trainings that were given to us by Senfree on using integrated risk assessment framework that unraveled the various risks that now has helped us reduce the risk ratings of some of our customers that were receiving a small amount of money from a high-risk jurisdiction. So the reduction of the collection of documentation has now increased our I would say the customer volumes to a good number. I'd also like to thank them for enabling us to leverage with one of our partners who is providing, who is terminating on our behalf through mobile, to provide due diligence documents whenever required, because that was a challenge with the regulator. And so we had to get the regulator accept us to rely on the third party, and then now the third party to give us access to documentation whenever required. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Mariam, for that. And you are emphasizing the importance of working with the regulator in terms of these innovations, but also understanding the risk that is posed by these low-income and rural households. And I think the earlier session emphasized or discussed, the issue of risk. What risk are you mitigating when you implement some of these processes? Now, turning to Moses, in the context of Uganda, EcoBank Uganda, what are some of the innovations that you have put in place, and what has been working and what hasn't been working?
Thank you, Masiwa. My fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Great opportunity. Thank you to IFAD. I'll go direct to the question. So, EcoBank Uganda, I got a chance to actually be a project manager of one of the key initiatives in the remittances space as someone who is directly in charge of remittances for the affiliate or for the bank. So one of them was, of course, identify the challenges, and here we are talking about KYC. If these people, if remittance recipients come to your branches, if they come to your locations, how are they going to access money? And what challenges do we have specifically around KYC? We found out that today someone has come with an ID, but tomorrow maybe they have forgotten, and by default they're going to assume that you have a copy of their ID because you have served them before, which is not always the case. Why? Because the KYC we don't have a copy of this person, or if we do, we have it in physical form. And if I'm going to retrieve it as a frontline person, I am going to go through a pile of thousands of transactions, which is time consuming. So the first solution that we developed is called an ID database, a digital ID database, whereby we collect information, minimal KYC from this customer, and then we store a digital copy of this recipient in a system that was developed in-house, so that when you return the next time, we actually retrieve a copy from the system. What does this solve? Ultimately, even when you have actually lost your ID, there are scenarios when maybe your bag was snatched off you, you no longer have an ID. Maybe an ID was in that bag. So that risk is mitigated. You're going to come the next time. Since we already have a copy of this ID, we can go ahead and serve you on a remittance. Then two, we are also seeing that people forget IDs. Not even forgetting the actual, let's say, national ID or a passport, they also do not know what kinds of IDs they should present. And of course, in different jurisdictions, there are different accepted forms of IDs. So today, if you've come with a driving license and it is not allowed, or we cannot serve you using that driver's license, we shall say, instead of turning you down, we are going to use the original ID that you had provided before, and we go ahead and serve you. Then it also simplifies our communication, since these are actually not directly our customers, they are just simple walk-ins, but maybe there are promotional activities that you want to run with them in the future, but we do not have the information digitally or stored in a soft form. So using this system, we can retrieve the information and maybe walk in the frequent customers. Remittances have a character of, I am going to send money to you every month. We have seen this trend. Since these are migrant workers mostly, they have to send back money at least every month or twice a month. So if something has happened to this customer, maybe they've not come to you in 2 months, in 3 months, using this system, we can go ahead and do further engagements. I mean, I can go on and on. The system is live, we have piloted, and we have seen enormous contributions, and of course, the positive feedback from our customers. Then the last and but not least is the system generated receipt. So if we talk about rural households or low income earners, the basic characteristic we are going to see is that these people are mostly illiterate. I'm not saying all of them are, but most of them. If someone cannot read and write, you're not going to make them write or fill a form when they are receiving a remittance. So there's been a risk of maybe contracting a third party, or they are going to speak to a security guard, or they're going to speak to a staff to help them fill a form, which has exposed mostly the information about the remittances, and then there's been a risk of maybe it has been tampered with, or it has been imposted, someone has imposted and tried to withdraw this remittance. So we are saying, we eliminate this form, we provide different solutions, come straight with your reference number to the tills and get served in an improved turnaround time experience. I think I'm going to stop here. I don't want to spend. Thank you so much, Masiwa.
Yeah, thank you very much, Moses, for sharing that. Now going to Seth, what are some of those opportunities within the Ghana context in terms of your regulated framework in enabling simplified due diligence and alternative identity?
All right, thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity as well. So I will speak as a regulator in the area of anti-money laundering, and also as an ECOWAS country assessor. As a regulator in terms of opportunities, it is expected that the banks and the non-banks should be able to put in place the measures to make sure that they engage in simplified due diligence. Now, I just want to connect to FATF recommendation 1 and also recommendation 10 and 14, talking about risk-based approach. So as a financial institution, if you want to engage in SDD, what are the risks that you've identified? What are the controls? What kind of services are you providing to warrant SDD? Now, in the context of remittance, as a country assessor, you notice that remittance transactions may not warrant SDD. It will go beyond that, meaning you may have to do normal KYC CDD, or even you go extra enhanced due diligence. So from my point as a regulator, in terms of opportunities, we are looking at the reporting entities or the financial institutions to conduct their institutional risk assessment, identify what they are exposed to, and also put in place the controls to be in line with the international standards. As we may also know, when it comes to financial inclusion, even the FATF standards promote financial inclusion. The World Bank too, that's almost all countries we use in West Africa, also promotes financial inclusion. So there's a component on financial inclusion. So that tells you that we support financial inclusion. However, we want to make sure that the weaknesses or the issues concerning AML/CFT are addressed within the National Risk Assessment Framework or within the Institutional Risk Assessment Framework. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Seth. And just to follow up on that, and as an assessor and somebody who has been involved in the mutual evaluations, now what would you say, what would your advice be to either a regulator or an institution that is hesitant to innovate on these issues, on the pretext that either this impacts grey listing or this actually leads to unfavorable mutual evaluation outcomes?
Sure. All right, thank you very much. Once again, to connect it to the Financial Action Task Force, as a regulator, we also want to promote financial inclusion agenda. So we want to make sure that in promoting financial inclusion agenda, we also do not, compromise on AML/CFT. If you look at some of the write-up from Financial Action Task Force, even World Bank and other stakeholders like RUSI, there's the need for us to promote financial inclusion. So then there should be innovative ideas, maybe in terms of simplified CDD, the need to get information from the clients. Once again, I'm talking as a regulator. So the banks and the non-banks are supposed to know more about their customers, so then they can gather basic information, maybe to do with fingerprints, to do with address confirmation, which may be stored in the system. So in the case of not having physical ID card, this information can be used to, assist the customer. As I said, the AML/CFT concept is not to disengage those who are not in the mainstream banking. If you look at some of the FATF guidance notes, even on unintended consequences, these are produced to make sure that at least we all promote financial inclusion. So as a regulator, we will encourage innovative ideas. We will make sure that the financial institutions conduct their risk assessment, come up with other forms of ID in terms of customer due diligence. In the context of Ghana, as we speak, we are promoting the Ghana card usage. So maybe in terms of financial inclusion, some of the institutions may have some challenges, but in the long run, I think it may help with CDD measures. So if you walk to any of the commercial banks in Ghana, be it EcoBank or Stanbic Bank, the key ID that will be required of you is the Ghana card. So we want to do that to make sure that we know more about clients. We can have the assistant, we can have their information already stored in a database, so then we can do genuine business with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that perspective. And just turning to you, Raymond, what kind of advice would you give on the same issue?
What was the question?
First one, RSP and regulators face mutual evaluation.
One motion is a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Advice on those that
No, thank you, Mosiwa. I think we all are aware that there are countries that were grey listed and fought hard to get out of the grey list. If you take the case of Mauritius, for example, they were only grey listed for a year. But that takes a lot of work. It means a proper strategy, a good coordination at the national level, the political will, and reaching to the right people. For grey listing, if you are positive, you are closer to white than you are closer to black. So that means you've got a chance to succeed and get out of the grey list if you contact the right people, you have the right strategy, and you know where to get help. I think the challenge with other countries that would be grey listed or get grey listed is the lack of proper coordination at the national level that they will have or face. It's important to have the national coordination, the political will, and reaching to the right people to get help. In this region, if you want to know where to get technical assistance, you know the FATF-style regional body, the SMLAC, or any FATF-style regional body where you can reach out to the secretariat and they can assist you, guide you to the right channels and the right people that can give you assistance. We've learned from various countries that it is possible to get out of the grey list much quicker and with a long-term success in terms of developing your MLTF controls in the long term without really regressing back to the grey list with the future mutual evaluations. If you have the right strategy at the national level and the right approach to dealing with the efficiencies, you are likely to win and get out of the grey list much quicker. I think it is very important to emphasize the issue of political will. You find that countries are grey listed, but the technical experts are on their own in terms of dealing with issues and deficiencies. If we do not escalate our issues to the right level of responsibility, the parliaments, the national committees, the high structures, we stand a chance of losing or the chance of failing in terms of tackling the issues that were identified by the mutual evaluation. So that's very important to know where the authority is and to know who are the right people to drive the development and the remediation of deficiencies that were pointed by the mutual evaluation. I think I cannot ignore the issue of knowing where to get the right help at the right time. When you are grey listed, there are opportunities, technical assistance, but know where to get help. If you think you will focus on getting assistance only at the national level by national coordination, by internal structures and organization, you stand a chance to lose. It's important to reach out to the right people and know where to get help that will drive change in your remedial efforts so that you drive the remedial process much quicker and achieve success efficiently. So I think that's very important, but we cannot ignore the issue of the political will so that you get the control at the right level, the funding and every support that you need. Lacking in political will means you are failing everywhere, because you will be driving change as the technical experts without the right support and the right authority at the top. which becomes the change, which becomes a challenge in driving change because you will have the slow pace and you will be frustrated by the lack of budget, lack of technical support nationally, and lack of proper strategy at the right level. So if you will get out of the grey list much quicker and succeed to have the long-term and lasting impact of the remediation work that you've done, you need to know where to get help, you need to have the right strategy, you need to have proper coordination at the right level, you need to reach out to the right people who will give you support. We've got the Secretariat, FATF style regional bodies. They know the right help for the right problem. So it's important to reach out and know where to go if you have challenges. So I think that's the approach. We've seen that you can be on the grey list and get out much quicker. But you can also be on the grey list and remain there for the very long time if you don't have the right support and the right authority to drive change. That's very important. We spoke about political will. So it's important to know who drives the processes and the right people, the right coordination at the right level. You will get out of the grey list quicker if you know what to do and you have the right strategy. Thank you, Monsieur.
Thank you very much for that, and then for just emphasizing the issue of political will, and also that grey listing is not the end of the world. You can still innovate and be able to serve the low-income and rural customers that really require financial services. Okay, I'll stop here. I can at least, I can go on in terms of asking questions to the panelists, but I'll stop here and just open the floor for questions from the audience or anyone wanting to share any specific innovation in their jurisdiction or context that has allowed them to better serve low-income and rural households. I'll just start by taking one from this side, one here, one there. Okay, the middle, you are ready. At the back.
Thank you. Michelle from Standard Bank. My question is for the regulators, including my own, so I'm asking this at my own risk. So the last conversation we just had was about financial inclusion. And I like that conversation because we do have the reality of undocumented migrants in countries like South Africa that have a large migrant population. Then here we're talking about ID. So in South Africa, you can't, as a bank like Standard Bank, bank an undocumented migrant. So I just want to understand then from a regulatory perspective, how are we thinking about financial inclusion for undocumented migrants? Because the fact that we can't bank them is actually excluding them even more. But I do understand, the intent of the regulation. How do you balance those two things?
Okay, we'll take the questions and then ask the panelists to address at once. Okay. Anything from this other side? Okay, Louis.
Thank you, Masiwa. The World Bank did a study about 18 months ago, Kuntai Chelik, looking at the extent to which countries have actually used the leeway allowed by FATF to implement simplified due diligence and exemptions, the low-risk exemption. And the finding was that the European countries and the G20 members are far greater users of that space than developing countries. And I just want to put that forward because I think that links with what Raymond has said. We need the political will because the leeway is there. Don't blame the standards. It's just a matter of bringing it in. It's not in the law to allow private institutions to actually implement simplified due diligence. And for many countries, that is the first threshold to be crossed. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Anyone from this side? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, you.
Sorry, my name is Anne Stella. I work for the Refugee Investment Network based in DC, and I'm the Senior Director East Africa. I had a question just on the basis of financial inclusion. My competence being in refugee investment, I wanted to understand what are the inputs, especially for organizations in host countries such as Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia, but in this case, EcoBank Uganda, and I think AMAL. What are the strategies you're putting in place to have financial inclusion, but within the refugee sector? Why I ask this question is because, I mean, refugees are vulnerable people, and they're completely, I would say, excluded from the ecosystem. So how can you be more involved, one, at a governmental level where you work with your local governments to fast track IDs for refugees, and second, are you open to alternative IDs that can make refugees included in your, maybe your portfolio of customers? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll allow the panelists to take the 3 questions. So the first one was on financial inclusion and reality of undocumented migrants. I think Raymond directed to you that one. And then the other one was more a comment from Louis about that simplified due diligence is provided for within the FATF framework, and we should do more to take advantage of that, because developed countries are actually utilizing that. And then your last question about refugees and what can be done to enhance their access. I'll start with Raymond. You can take the first question on financial inclusion and undocumented migrants.
No, thank you, Musio. We need to look at the root causes of undocumented migrants. Why are they undocumented? And deal with those root causes. If we don't know who we are including into the system, how is that sustainable for our economies and long-term development, and ensuring that we are including the right people and not criminals? We need to deal with the root causes of the database for people that are in our countries, and that is the work that needs to be coordinated at the national level, at the right level. Make sure that you've got processes and ways of having the database and document the people and know who's who in the country. Because it's very difficult to ensure financial inclusion if you don't know who you are including. So the issue of database at the national level and making sure that you've got the right documentation and the right system of record keeping is of prime importance if we're going to succeed in our countries. We want to ensure inclusion, but we also want to improve the database and the knowledge of who's who in the country. That's of prime importance. That means there need to be coordination at the national level. The financial sector, the regulators, the departments of Home Affairs needs to have a proper coordination and discussion to achieve these goals. First, with documentation and database, and ensuring that you have projects that are run and driven to ensure that we achieve this purpose. Documenting people in a project planned environment with the timelines, with the proper budgets and drive to ensure that you've got a functional national database. That's of prime importance. You cannot drive financial inclusion without proper documentation. Because if you don't know who's who in the zoo, who are you including? So that's important. It goes together, we cannot achieve financial inclusion unless we have the proper database and the good project of ensuring that the database is up to date and it works and it's project driven with the timelines and proper budget. I think that's very important. We cannot drive financial inclusion without this other leg, which is to ensure that you've got proper documentation. Thank you, Musi.
Thank you, Raymond. Seth, you want to add?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Yeah, just to make comment on that and also maybe to share best practices. In the case of Ghana, we have guidelines for the banking sector. So the Financial Intelligence Center and the Central Bank, we have anti-money laundering guidelines for the banking sector. Within the guideline, there's a component on account for asylum seekers and also refugees. And this should be a basic bank account. Now, to qualify for the account opening, there should be a letter from the director of Refugee Board or chairman of Refugee Board, just to confirm that indeed you're an asylum seeker in Ghana or a refugee. So with this, the financial institution is required to open basic bank accounts and also monitor transactions. So if it's a basic bank account and the inflows are, let's say, maybe beyond some threshold, then that may also raise suspicion, and that can also be confirmed as well. So in terms of best practices, that's what we are doing in Ghana, and I think it's been effective. Almost all the banks in Ghana, they do share the list of asylum seekers with the FIC or the FIU at least once a year. Then we also engage other state entities like maybe Foreign Affairs to know whether this person is an asylum seeker. Then the other comment from our boss here to do with simplified due diligence. Yes, indeed, within our sub-region, I'm talking about ECOWAS, most of the ECOWAS member states also take advantage of the FATF guidance or standards when it comes to SDD. The last country assessed was the Gambia. If you go through their mutual evaluation reports, there's a component on simplified due diligence. They have account for village account, as they call it. So if you live in a remote place or places and you want to have basic bank accounts or to be included, they will look at what their national risk assessment says and also make sure that at least you are onboarded as a customer. So we do take advantage of that. The same way, if you look at Ghana's national risk assessment, we have a component on SDD because of the World Bank tool that we used. And we make sure that we don't compromise on anti-money laundering issues, even though we promote financial inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seth. We are rounding up now, and just half a minute to Moses and Mariam.
Thank you, Masiwa. And I'm just going to give response to the issue of refugees raised by one of the members. So the digital solutions that we have devised do not exclude refugees, correct? So we serve nationals, we serve the international community, but we also serve the refugee community because we are one of the biggest host countries in Africa. So we use the refugee ID, and then thanks to UNHCR, the new refugee ID has at least advanced features, so we are able to validate that. Thank you so much.
Okay, Mariam, just quickly.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to add to what Moses just said. Yes, we do serve refugees, and the only challenge we have had with the refugee IDs is the duration of renewal when they expire. And I want to urge the immigration, if anybody is here, to process them faster to enable them get financial inclusion.
Thank you very much. Big thank you to our panelists and the perspectives that you have shared. Big thank you to all of you. I think the key issue that has been emphasized here is when you look at enabling access, financial access to low-income and rural households, it's not private sector versus regulators. It's about working together. It's also about understanding the conceptual foundations, which was touched on in the previous session, of some of the FATF provisions, and also that FATF provisions at the moment do provide for simplified due diligence, do provide for innovations to enable access for low income and rural households. So thank you very much, everyone, for this. Back to you, Pedro.